love being out there with you guys. It's the only thing that matters to me.
The Bonner will forever be the greatest family in the history of wrestling.
Today we're going to talk about this movie I watched last week, The Iron Claw. It stars Zac Efron as Kevin Von Erich, along with him and his brothers, the Von Erich family, led by their dad, who was this wrestler. This is based on true events. This really was a prominent wrestling family back in the day. So the father was a wrestler, never really made it to be world champion, always wanted to. So he had a lot of sons, kind of pushed them into being wrestlers, which they wanted to be like their dad, so they also kind of naturally wanted to be wrestlers as well. And so you see their journey of them trying to fight to break it big in wrestling and become like a world champion, rise to the top, and their dad encourages them to compete with each other and really push themselves to the limits, and they do. And this family is cursed. That's the problem. That's the main
He's my favorite, then Kev, then David, then Mike. But the rankings can always change.
As you see there, he really puts a lot of pressures on his sons to be better than each other, to be the best that they can be, which it on one hand is really good. It pushed them to genuinely be these like household names in the wrestling industry. But at the same time, it was really also their tragic downfall. So in a lot of this movie, you get to see all these awesome moments of them being a family and a lot of the brothers having fun with each other, juxtaposed with them working incredibly hard, pushing themselves beyond their limits, and it really kind of backfired for them.
What do you want in life, Kevin Von Erich?
More ribs?
So famously, this family, the Von Erich family, is cursed. Every time stuff gets going good, it actually just downfalls and becomes so much worse. And there's so much tragedy in this film, and so much deep emotion, of so much relatability to like functioning as a family and advancing as a family. And it's just so heartbreaking to see tragedy after tragedy strike these awesome characters. And it's great to see Zac Efron and everyone involved in this be so dedicated, right? Because so many of these scenes, they're just like full-on wrestling scenes, right? So that these brothers function as what's known as a wrestling faction, which is pretty much just a group of 3 or more wrestlers is a faction, because it's more than a tag team. So there's tons of scenes where they're just actually performing wrestling moves, which is even a trained wrestler, like someone where they've dedicated their whole life to this, like these actual guys, the actual character, or not the characters, the real people that these characters are of, because it's a real story. The real Von Erichs, like this was their whole life. They were born and bred for this. Realistically, they've dedicated their entire lives to being wrestlers. So they've trained for like years and years, their entire life, to perfect these fine moves to where they make it look like they're trying to hurt each other. They have to be in character, making it look like they're really trying to harm their opponent, make it look like they're taking harm. There's so much like character work just in being like an actual wrestler. There's so much acting and entertainment. The wrestling world has its own like terms, its own rules. It's this weird corner of entertainment that's like just this dynamic, beautiful thing if you allow yourself to enjoy the like acting and theatrics of it all. But to have actors, have Zac Efron and these other actors have to quickly learn this, which they did, under the training of Chavo Guerrero, who's another popular name in the wrestling world, or at least he was at one point. Really cool to see them have to pick up this skill very quickly. That requires a huge amount of dedications as they perform these moves. One tiny misstep, one miscalculation, you can like injure permanently injured. People have been like paralyzed and flat out didn't make it out of the wrestling ring with their life. That has happened. I mean, look at that. Yeah, some of these guys, some of them like are actual wrestlers. Some of them are stuntmen, but you're still like smashing your body into somebody else, right? So things can go extremely wrong. So to see that kind of dedication from an actor, one of the coolest moments in this movie, you see Zac Efron and the rest of the brothers. They go to a wedding, and Zac Efron, who is known for like The Greatest Showman, High School Musical, like this, him as an actor, he is a great dancer, right? So these brothers who are wrestlers, like they're at a wedding and they're doing like a little dance together. So Zac Efron the actor Zac Efron playing Kevin Von Erich. Well, Kevin Von Erich can't dance, but the actor Zac Efron can. So he has to play it that he's somebody who can't dance. It's just made me laugh out loud to see that. And this movie nearly made me like shed some major tears because it is heartbreaking, devastating, because you connect with these characters so deeply. And just these brother characters, their love for each other and life really shines through in the pain and misery that they subject themselves to try to reach the top of their industry and gain the approval of their father. It's devastating. Also, Zac Efron's character specifically, you see the movie through his eyes, and it is so tragic as he is easily like the most dedicated to like being a tried and true wrestler, but sometimes his brothers outshine him. So you also just see that tragedy within his eyes of him having to constantly play like second fiddle in a supporting role as like a wrestler to their careers, and to see him battle between him wanting to succeed himself and get his father's approval himself, but then him also genuinely loving his brothers and having him being jealous of their success but also supportive. It's painful. This entire movie is painful, and that's what you want out of a movie, is an experience, something that makes you feel something, that gives you something. And this movie will give you a lot. I absolutely recommend it. Zac Efron, he got jacked as all heck for this movie. It is impressive. So much of this movie is so darn impressive.
Or we are through.
I told you to look out for him!
I just love.
Everyone who talks about this movie talks about how one part in particular, if you're a wrestling fan, this guy plays Ric Flair. I keep trying to pull him on here.
In the history of wrestling!
Right there. So it does feel like a guy doing a Ric Flair impression, but Ric Flair is one of the biggest names in wrestling history. A guy who's known for being like strong on the mic, being over the top and flamboyant, but also like intensely manly. It's kind of this like really specific niche of just absolute oozing charisma. So you can't blame an actor for not being able to replicate one of the most entertaining people in the history of entertainment. And when he's talking in the locker room, it does feel like it's Ric Flair, but at other times it kind of doesn't. But that's the only downside of this movie. All the rest is just pure gold. Check it out. The Iron Claw. I saw it in theaters last week, and I'm very happy that I did. You will enjoy the crap out of this. Even if you're not into wrestling, check it out.